Hello, thank you for joining us. We begin our report with Vice President Kamala Harris, who's talking to her new campaign, and we're going to listen in.
I will tell you, it has been one of the greatest honors of my life, truly, to serve as Vice President to our President Joe Biden. Joe's legacy of accomplishment, just over a lifetime, but just over the last 3.5 years, is unmatched in modern history. In one term, he has already surpassed the legacy of most presidents who served 2 terms in office. Think about it. And I know everyone here in the campaign, we know. But if we don't know, we got a problem. But I'm going to repeat some for those who might be guests at the moment. Joe got the COVID-19 pandemic under control. Remember those days? He has created more than 15 million new jobs. He brought together Republicans and Democrats and passed historic legislation. And I'm going to tell you, I'm a firsthand witness to all this work. I would sit with Joe in the Oval Office while he would bring members of both sides of the aisle and talk and listen and help them see what they may have in common and how we can actually work towards solutions. And because of their confidence in Joe, these accomplishments occurred. Joe has stood up for democracy at home, and he has stood up for democracy abroad, and he has always stood up for what he believes is right. And many of you may know, I first came to know Joe through his son, Beau. Beau and I worked together as state attorneys general. And back then, Beau would often tell me stories about his dad. And he would talk about the kind of father and the kind of man that Joe Biden is. And he would talk about the qualities of his father. And the qualities that Beau revered the most are the same qualities that I see every day in our president. His honesty, his integrity, his commitment to his faith and his family, his big, big heart, and his deep love of our country. And I don't need to tell you all, you know Joe's background, right? I mean, he grew up in a middle-class family in Scranton, and he has never forgotten where he comes from. And so, again, I am a first-hand witness from being with him in the Oval Office to the Situation Room and seeing him on the global stage with world leaders. President Joe Biden fights for the American people, and we are deeply, deeply grateful for his service to our nation.
I'm watching. I'm watching.
We love you, Joe.
You're the best, kid.
And let us be very clear, Joe is not done. Far from it. He knows there is still more work to do, and our nation will continue to praise his bold and visionary leadership as president. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
And it is my great honor to have Joe's endorsement in this race.
You sure do.
And it is my intention to go out and earn this nomination and to win. So in the days and weeks ahead, I, together with you, will do everything in my power to unite our Democratic Party, to unite our nation, and to win this election. You know, as many of you know, before I was elected as Vice President, before I was elected as United States Senator, I was the elected Attorney General, as I've mentioned, of California, and before that I was a courtroom prosecutor. In those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type. And in this campaign, I will proudly put my record against his. As a young prosecutor, when I was in the Alameda County District Attorney's Office in California, I specialized in cases involving sexual abuse. Donald Trump was found liable by a jury for committing sexual abuse. As Attorney General of California, I took on one of our country's largest for-profit colleges and put it out of business. Donald Trump ran a for-profit college, Trump University, that was forced to pay $25 million to the students it scammed. As district attorney, to go after polluters, I created one of the first environmental justice units in our nation. Donald Trump stood in Mar-a-Lago and told big oil lobbyists he would do their bidding for a $1 billion campaign contribution. During the foreclosure crisis, I took on the big Wall Street banks and won $20 billion for California families, holding those banks accountable for fraud. Donald Trump was just found guilty of 34 counts of fraud. But make no mistake, all of that being said, this campaign is not just about us versus Donald Trump. There is more to this campaign than that. Our campaign has always been about two different versions of what we see as the future of our country, two different visions for the future of our country. One focused on the future, the other focused on the past. Donald Trump wants to take our country backward to a time before many of our fellow Americans had full freedoms and rights. But we believe in a brighter future that makes room for all Americans. We believe in a future where every person has the opportunity not just to get by, but to get ahead. We believe in a future where no child has to grow up in poverty, where every person can buy a home, start a family, and build wealth. And where every person has access to paid family leave and affordable child care. That's the future we see. Together we fight to build a nation where every person has affordable health care, where every worker is paid fairly, and where every senior can retire with dignity. All of this is to say, building up the middle class will be a defining goal of my presidency. Because we here know when our middle class is strong, America is strong. And we know that's not the future Donald Trump is fighting for. He and his extreme Project 2025 will weaken the middle class and bring us backward. Please do note that. Back to the failed trickle-down policies that gave huge tax breaks to billionaires and big corporations and made working families pay the cost. Back to policies that put Social Security and Medicare on the chopping block. Back to policies that treat health care as only a privilege for the wealthy instead of what we all know it should be, which is a right for every American. America has tried these economic policies before. They do not lead to prosperity. They lead to inequity and economic injustice. And we are not going back. We are not going back. You're not taking us back. Our fight for the future is also a fight for freedom. Generations of Americans before us have led the fight for freedom, from our founders to our framers, to the abolitionists and the suffragettes, to the freedom riders and farm workers. And now I say, team, the baton is in our hands. We who believe in the sacred freedom to vote, we who are committed to fight to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. We who believe in the freedom to live safe from gun violence. And that's why we will work to pass universal background checks, red flag laws, and an assault weapons ban. We who will fight for reproductive freedom, knowing if Trump gets the chance, he will sign a national abortion ban to outlaw abortion in every single state, but we are not going to let that happen. It is this team here that is going to help in this November to elect a majority of members of the United States Congress who agree the government should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. And when Congress passes a law to restore reproductive freedoms, as President of the United States, I will sign it into law. Indeed, we the people. So ultimately, to all the friends here, I say, in this election, we know we each face a question: what kind of country do we want to live in? A country of freedom, compassion, and rule of law?
Yes!
Or a country of chaos, fear, and hate?
No!
You all are here because you, as leaders, know we each, including our neighbors and our friends and our family, we each, as Americans, have the power to answer that question. That's the beauty of it, the power of the people. We each have the ability to answer that question. So in the next 106 days, we have work to do. We have doors to knock on. We have people to talk to. We have phone calls to make. And we have an election to win. So are you ready to get to work? Do we believe in freedom? Do we believe in opportunity? Do we believe in the promise of America? And are we willing to fight for it? And when we fight, we win. God bless you all, and God bless the United States of America and Joe Biden.
That was Vice President Kamala Harris speaking to what is now her campaign, using expressions like, that will be the defining goal of my presidency, and also, the baton is in our hands. Molly Ball joins us now. She's the senior political correspondent at the Wall Street Journal. Molly, it's great to be with you. I hope you were listening in. I think you were listening in. What did you make of that speech?
Really the first look we have gotten at what message Kamala Harris wants to take into this campaign. And I found it very interesting in those terms. On the one hand, it's very contiguous, right, with a lot of the things that Joe Biden was talking about in his campaign, particularly the emphasis on the middle class. But you also hear her drawing there on her background as a prosecutor to really forcefully drive the argument against Donald Trump, talking about him being a convicted felon, talking about some of the things that he's done, and using the credibility that she has as a basically member of law enforcement to drive that case home. And I think for the Democrats who are rallying around her, just to hear someone prosecute that case against Trump in such concise and future-oriented terms is really refreshing. That a lot of the angst about Joe Biden was about his inability to do that.
Yeah, that was essentially a locker room speech, a term that was used in a previous campaign in quite a different context. But that was rallying the troops. And I note that the campaign reports that $81 million was raised in the first 24 hours, 888,000 grassroots donors, 60% of whom made their first contribution in the 2024 cycle. So that seems to support your, I guess that's a sign of some considerable enthusiasm, at least in the first 24 hours.
Yes, if there was ever any doubt about whether the Democratic Party was going to rally around Kamala Harris, and I would say there's a little bit of uncertainty, right? She's in the polls before this handover was not much more popular than President Biden, including with the Democratic grassroots. But you really see it may not be a quantitative change, but it's a qualitative change in the way that the Democratic base is now responding to the new name on top of the ticket. Obviously, the campaign staff is going to be excited. They literally get paid to be excited about the Democratic nominee. But those fundraising figures that you cite, there's clearly an organic groundswell of enthusiasm on the part of the Democratic grassroots. Still a long ways to go in this campaign, but it's a good sign for her as she tries to marshal the party into unity and move forward.
What's your sense, Molly, as a last question, of the emerging lines of attack from the Republican campaign, and has the Trump team, are they adapting to this new challenge, or have they been caught off guard thinking they were pretty much going to run against Biden?
It's a little bit of both. They did have plans drawn up for a potential switch, but they weren't particularly emphasizing. They didn't really think it was going to happen. And of course, it's a different ballgame when it actually does happen. They have been airing ads targeting Kamala Harris. A new ad that went up, I believe, yesterday is emphasizing her alleged role in the alleged cover-up of Joe Biden's condition, trying to erode her image as trustworthy in particular. So I think that's something we can expect to continue. And then beyond that, they're just talking a lot about her role in the Biden-Harris administration, saying that any policy failures, any unpopular policies of this administration are equally her fault and his. And we know that the policies of this administration are quite unpopular. And I expect we will hear the Trump campaign talk quite a bit about how she's implicated in the economic policies, the border policies, the foreign policy, all of the record of the Biden-Harris administration.
Yes, indeed. Molly Ball with the Wall Street Journal. Thank you so much, Molly.
Thanks, John.